It's time to get chiseled with Rob Commodari.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Chiseled. And why do we call it Chiseled? Because we're all a work in progress. I'm your host. I'm Rob Commodari. I'm also the author of the book Better Than You Think and co-authored 3 others. Today, my guest is Will Davis. He's a Denver-based real estate professional, wealth strategist, and financial educator. Since 2016, he's built a referral-based real estate business ranking in the top 3% of realtors and teams in Denver, Colorado. Through his platform, Breaking Free from the 90s Financial Advice, Will helps realtors and commission-based professionals rethink traditional 90s financial advice and build practical strategies for lasting financial independence. He lives in Colorado with his wife and their 4 children and enjoys trail running, climbing, and mountain biking. Will, welcome to the show today. Thank you for being here.
Thanks, Rob. It's great to be here. Appreciate it.
Yeah. So how long have you been in the business now?
So I got licensed on accident in 2016, so almost 10 years.
So on accident, what does that mean?
It means I'm a pastor's kid, and I grew up in the church. And when you're growing up in the church, everybody rubs your head and tells you you're going to be just like your dad. You're going to be a pastor. And so I had mainly just done a lot of ministry leading up to that point, and I was waiting on a church to hire me. They were talking about hiring me, and they just kept dragging their feet. And so I was like, I got to do something, because we were running out of money at the time. And I had a buddy that was like, hey, you should just do real estate. He was in real estate. And I was like, sure, why not? I never intended to do it long-term or anything like that. And here we are.
I get a kick out of what you said there. Like, just do real estate. We hear the old axiom, hey, I'm just going to try real estate. And what happened? So you just tried it, I guess you could say, in 2016. And here you are 10 years later.
Here we are 10 years later. It was either that or do Merrill Lynch. I've got family members that work for Merrill Lynch, and I just liked the idea of being in a car and being a little more independent. Had no clue what I was signing up for, and that's how it happened.
So you had no clue what you're signing up for. So there's no clue, but I was going to say, has it been what you expected? If you didn't know what to expect, how could it be what you expected? But has it overwhelmed you in any capacity at all?
I think my understanding at the time of what it was accurate, but obviously there was 90% of it that I didn't know. And I would say that it hasn't been overwhelming. I would say it's been a really good fit. Certainly at times when the business was growing or the market was really intense, it was overwhelming for sure. And then, when I got licensed, it was my wife and I living in an apartment. Now we have 4 kids and 1 on the way. And so it looks different with, 4 or 5 kids. It looks different at this stage in our lives, but it's been great.
Wow. From an apartment, just you 2, 4 kids, a 5th on his way. Congratulations.
Thank you.
All in a matter of 10 years.
Yeah. It's been a while.
You're a busy guy in more ways than one.
Yeah. It's been really fun.
Good for you. So you said you're a pastor's son. Talk to me a little bit about like that experience growing up, because you said everybody rubbed your head and said you're just going to be like your dad. Did you have any intention or any ambition of being a pastor?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think I wanted to be a fighter pilot when I was a kid. I wanted to be a fighter pilot and work for NASA, but what I knew was the church, and what I knew, it was ministry. My dad started a church in 1993. He recently retired from last year. And, I grew up going to church with Dad in the mornings and set up and tear down, and I'd run the slides or I'd run sound. I was just involved. And I'm also Will Davis III. There's a Will Davis Jr. and a Will Davis Sr. So that was just kind of my identity growing up. And not necessarily I chose it or I didn't choose it. It just was what it was. And so I knew ministry more so than anything else. And so I kind of just thought that's what I'm supposed to do. And so I was, there was an experience in college where I was my fraternity's chaplain, and that went really well. I really enjoyed it. I was like, this is what I'm supposed to do. So, I did all kinds of things. I was a worship leader. I was a director of a nonprofit, lots of different roles throughout the years in ministry. And that's what I thought. Amy and I both, my wife and I both thought that's just what our life was going to be. And it just took a hard right turn that was all from the hand of God in 2015, 2016.
Well, what was that hand of God moment? Because you said by accident, but what was the hand of God moment that said, I got to do this?
Well, it turns out that I guess I can be stubborn. So what happened was there was some growth that needed to happen. I kept having people in those years tell me, man, have you ever thought about business? You should do business. Seems like you could be good at business. And it was just over and over and over again. I actually had a career counselor at the time. He was like, have you considered business? But I just dismissed it and ignored it because it wasn't consistent with what I thought I wanted. And if you really, really like unpack it, what was underneath all that, I'm, maybe a little ashamed to say now, is I just felt like, I think what I realize now is I felt like if I did ministry, maybe like, God would love me a little more and have an extra, connection there. And I just didn't feel like he cared about business at all. And I grew out of that. But at the time, that was a major factor. Is I kind of felt like, I really have to do ministry here to be in good graces with God. And when people said you should do business, what I heard them saying is, you're never going to measure up to your dad. You're not cut out like he is. You have to go do something subpar and kind of inferior because you're not enough. Obviously, that's not reality, but that's what kind of fueled that hand of God moment.
Yeah, but you just said now a second ago, you said you're almost ashamed to say it. What makes you ashamed?
I'm ashamed to say that I felt like my identity was different if I worked for a church versus if I worked in business, because that's not true.
Yeah, we know that, right? Yeah, I mean, I think let's talk about identity. Like you said, your identity was in growing up as the pastor's son before. What do you place your identity in now?
Well, I think I don't even know that I've arrived necessarily. I think it's an ongoing kind of daily, renewing of your mind. But, especially where I am right now, I think my identity is first and foremost just in what Christ has done and in what he says about me. And is there things I want to do? Do I have ambition? Yes. But it's less about the ambition and the things I want to do and the things I've accomplished, and more about, look, my identity was decided a long time ago, and whatever happens or doesn't happen in this life, my foundation is this identity of security and love in Christ.
Yeah, it's interesting because I've done a presentation before in the past talking about identity theft. And the way I phrased it was, there's two types of identity theft. There's the identity theft, that the obvious one, when they steal your credit card or your social security number and do something with it. But there's the identity theft that we allow to occur when we allow other people to place an identity on us. In other words, you should be the pastor's son, or you're going to grow up just like your dad, or do this or do that. And when we allow people when we give that right for people to steal that identity, and we play into that, then we're allowing our identity to be stolen, and we don't grow into the identity we're supposed to have, which I think you put it so beautifully, is the identity in Christ. Correct?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Yes. I love that. So do you struggle with the idea, because you said, I still have ambition? Do you struggle with the idea of feeling guilty about having ambition?
No, I don't. But I do think, just where I am today, an idea that I feel like God's very gently kind of beginning to warm me up to is, I think there's kind of two categories of ambition. And this is just my personal opinion. I don't have data to back it up. I think there is ambition that comes from a place of wounding, where it's either like, oh my gosh, this happened, I never want to let that happen again. I never want to feel like that again. And so it just kind of fuels this intense energy to go to the opposite end. So that's one kind of ambition. And I think the other kind of ambition is more so, hey, I'm going to heal from what happened, or I'm going to grow from what happened, but I don't have to use accomplishment and achievement to do it. I can use this identity in Christ, or I can use something a little bit more holistic than just overachievement. And so then I think when you get to that place where you kind of can let go of riding this rocket that's just fueled out of hurt and just sit with yourself for a minute, there still can be ambition on the other side of that, but it's more from a place of abundance. It's more from a place of, what can I give back and what can I offer, instead of just a trauma response, essentially. So there might be some overlap there, but that's kind of what I'm digging through today.
No, I think it's great because I get it. Like the ambition is like the type of ambition. It's like I'm going to prove them wrong. Yeah, or I had this trauma, and it's like a vindictiveness almost. And then the healing part, I think, is, or maybe not so much healing as it is. I have ambition to do this because if I do this, I can help other people.
Yeah, it's you're kind of giving from a place of like, hey, I'm set, I'm good. Regardless of what happens or doesn't happen, here's what I have to offer. It's a very kind of grounded place to get. Not that the first one's not, but it's a little bit different. Yeah, there's nuances there.
Yeah, I love the topic. Just you're talking about that. So tell me about, you're in real estate now, but the wealth strategist and financial educator, was that prior to your real estate career, or is that an ongoing thing as well?
It was ongoing. Amy and I thought, okay, I'm going to be a pastor. We're going to get married. We will make $30,000 to $40,000 a year for my whole life. That was our expectation. Money was just never in the equation. And so we did well. We got in real estate, and first year was rough. Second year was really, really good. And then third year was good. And each year got a little bit better. And then in 2020, it really exploded. And then 2021, it exploded. Right. And so there was exponential growth. And so as we started making money, it was like, I had kind of done all of what I call 90s financial advice, which is what everybody knows, right? It's like, save money, max out your retirement, your 401k, like invest in index funds in the stock market, pay off all debt as quick as possible, right? Just everything everyone's ever told you. I had maxed that out hard. And I was like, there is got to be more to it than this. And I was looking at certain people I knew that were just living on a whole different level and had businesses on a whole different level. And when I would talk to them or study them, I would realize, okay, they're not doing any of this. Like, they are not doing 90s financial advice at all. So it really put me on this quest. I was like, I have got to figure out and reconcile what's going on here. And so I started studying, decamillionaires, centimillionaires, family offices, what they're doing. And it's the opposite of what the middle class is taught to do. And so I started just investing, right? I was going to conferences and masterminds and getting to know everybody that's doing these strategies. And I learned a ton, and there is a lot more to it. And then I thought, man, this is great. This is working for me, but I would love to share this with other people. I know there's other people who would dramatically benefit from this. And so it was years of learning and studying on my own, implementing it for my own business, my own family. And ultimately, kind of like everything, I was like, okay, I'd love to share this.
Can I dive into that a little bit?
Yeah.
So talk to me about a strategy that you learned on how to become a decamillionaire.
Well, so first of all, since you're talking about net worth, it's really interesting, but like there's more of an emphasis as folks get wealthier on cash flow instead of net worth and appreciation, because 90s financial advice very much stresses net worth, appreciation, accumulation, assets in the stock market that grow. You just have this big pile of money. And when you really talk about financial independence, which is very much what I want, and I got to think everybody wants that if they really understood how you defined that. Financial independence is absolutely about cash flow, 100%. And there's different types of cash flow. You can have active cash flow from a business, right? You sell houses. That's active cash flow from a business. You can have passive cash flow from investments. But essentially, when you have, financial independence, really boil it down, it's when you have passive income that comes in every single month that meets or exceeds your expenses. So regardless of whether you work or not, you're good to go. So you can obviously still work. This isn't about retirement. This is a very different idea than retirement, but it's really cash flow focused. And so then when you peel that back, it's like, part of cash flow is keeping as much as we make. Well, then we very quickly get into where's the drag, and obviously taxes are a huge drag for folks that are making some money. And so then we very quickly get into tax strategies. And when you invest in the stock market, generally you're going to get appreciation, right? But when you invest, there are certain investments, real estate's a great example, where you can get appreciation, cash flow, and depreciation. You can get $1 that returns all three of those things. In the stock market, it's really just appreciation. And if you're making money, you really do need tax benefits, and you also want cash flow. So that's the absolute tip of the iceberg, and it all kind of goes from there.
That was great. I don't know. I'm gonna have to hit replay so everybody can catch on to that. He just ripped through that. So he sounds like you're pretty passionate about that.
I am. My brain works that way. I think it's fascinating. I think it's interesting. Ultimately, I think, everybody has, here's where I am today, and here's where I am, or here's where I'd like to be. And you and I are both in Buffini coaching, so he talks a lot about the 5 circles: family, spiritual, personal, physical, and business. And you give a number grade to each one of those, and where would I like to be in all 5 of those areas? And, Brian will say it. I mean, money's really important. Money has the ability to kind of move all those things forward. And I think I've just been absolutely struck by how inefficient and how backwards, as the wealthiest nation in the country, our financial system is, and specifically the advice that's given to us, which is, again, what I call 90s financial advice. It's backwards, it's inefficient, and it doesn't account for the absolute biggest financial problem we all have today, which is inflation. Doesn't deal with it at all. And so the more I tore it apart, and the more I saw things I couldn't unsee, and so we've kind of built out a system and a process to help people deal with that.
I'll tell you what, we're going to take a quick break, and we're going to dive into that a little bit more, if you don't mind.
Let's do it.
Hang tight.
Chiseled is presented by the Commodari Group of eXp Realty, led by your host, Rob Commodari. Are you planning to buy or sell? We know the process can feel stressful and frustrating. That's why Rob and his team focus on providing a personal touch and the best service and guidance during your transaction. The Commodari Group are top-tier professionals who deliver spectacular customer service. They provide expert advice on accurately pricing your home and making the entire process smooth and seamless. They simply get it done. Here's the connection to Chiseled. Many of the amazing guests you hear on this podcast are part of Rob's extended referral network. While the Commodari Group serves the Baltimore area, Rob can connect you with superb representatives across North America. Clients rely on this network because Rob actually cares about you and your family, treating your experience as if it was his own. Don't settle for less than the best. If you need a trustworthy and knowledgeable agent locally or across North America, Rob is the guy to call. Contact Rob today at 410-262-7396 or send him an email, rob@talktorob.com.
Welcome back, everybody. Welcome back, Will. Before break, you talked about having a system that I guess fights or works with inflation. But before we go there, I got to ask this question: are you a Dave Ramsey guy at all?
Well, I have a lot of respect for Dave, especially as a businessman. I think a lot of his financial advice is going to fall into that larger category of 90s financial advice.
Okay, so talk to me about a little bit about this. You said the system that you built.
Well, so let's do a case study. Who are we talking about here? Are we talking about your average family? Are we talking about a realtor? Who are we talking about?
Let's talk about an average family.
Yeah. So what's the average family told to do? Like, just off the top of your head, like if you have a client that bought a house, Rob, what do we do to get ahead financially? What would you tell them?
Well, you pay one extra payment a month on this, fund your retirement. I would tell them to buy an investment property. I would tell them that. I think most people aren't told that. And max out your 401k.
Yeah. Okay, great. That's plenty to work with. So the average family, right? So like the average household, I don't necessarily remember what it is. I think it's about $70,000 to $80,000 median household income in the United States. Okay. So that's who we're talking about here. So those folks are generally going to be on a salary. A salary is a fixed income. So with a fixed income, you do not necessarily have the ability to increase your income unilaterally. They work for a boss who decides that. They can't, scale it to if they have more kids, or if they just want to buy a bigger house. They can't unilaterally scale their income. And generally, it's on a single point failure system, meaning if somebody gets fired, they don't have any other major sources of income coming in. The other factor is inflation, obviously. So at $70,000 a year, inflation is going to erode that over time. And so when you look back, especially COVID, right? So somebody making $100,000 today has taken about a 20 to a 25% pay cut through inflation over the last 5 or 6 years. So if somebody's working a job right now and their boss walks in and says, "Hey, I love you, you're great, but we got to give you a 20% pay cut," no matter how much you like that job, you're probably gone. But when that happens over because of inflation, nobody does anything about it. They kind of just sit there and take it. And so folks that are having families specifically, their expenses are going to naturally increase. Not the reasons Dave says, not because they bought a boat, not because they were irresponsible. They had more kids. They need more square footage. They need a bigger house. They need more diapers. So you have this system that pairs, right? 90s financial advice pairs a fixed linear income with unfixed, unlinear expenses, especially with inflation. So for any kind of solution, we first have to understand the problem, and that is the problem. So with that, if we're telling people to pay down debt as quickly as possible, whether it's your car or put an extra principal payment in an era where their cash flow is shrinking because of massive inflation. Okay, so cash flow is getting diminished. We're telling people to practice what I call self-imposed cash flow limitation, which is, hey, let's put money in a place where you can't get it back very easily. When we pay down principal on our house, which I'm not saying you should never do that, but as a general rule of thumb, if you're going to put extra money towards your principal, it doesn't benefit you at all. You don't have the capital available anymore for opportunity cost. And when you pay down the principal, your payment doesn't change. So you realize no benefit at all whatsoever until that mortgage is fully gone. The second one would be obviously retirement accounts. Like you can get money out of retirement accounts, but it's very painful because of taxes and penalties. And so this idea that we're supposed to just put money away in a place where we can't get it for 30 or 40 years, our entire working career, hope that it's enough, hope we don't run out. And in the meantime, you're fourth in line to get that money. So generally, financial advisors and mutual fund managers, which they're not the problem, but those folks realize cash flow from that investment over 30 or 40 years. The government takes money before you do when you take money out. And so you're fourth in line. It's a clunky, contrived system that doesn't address the problem of today, which is inflation. And so we've got people that are in theory saving, but they're actually putting money they desperately need today to get by today in a place where they can't get it.
Okay. So what does that leave? How do you beat the inflation?
Well, so how do we beat inflation? So if I asked you, like, how do you beat inflation? What would you say?
Well, I'm a real estate guy. So, I mean, I'm buying investment properties. I'm creating that passive income. I got the appreciation, depreciation, and cash flow all in one basket.
So really, it's pretty simple. You either have to have...
I'm a guy too, by the way. I do invest in stocks. So go ahead.
Yeah. So essentially, it's really simple. To beat inflation, you either have to have a return have a net return that is greater than inflation, and ideally by more than a few margin points, or you have to have access to cash today. That's probably the absolute best way to beat inflation, is to have access to cash today, because if you have the cash today and you can use it today, your opportunity cost is limited and you're not at risk of it just sitting there and getting chewed up, eaten alive over 30 or 40 years. So that is the principle of how we beat inflation. And then underneath that, there's all kinds of different tactics.
Yeah. So when we're finished here at the end of the conversation, you can tell people how to get a hold of you if they want to learn more about that. So how does all this tie into, I'll call it ministry, because obviously you're a pastor's son and you're a believer. Is there something that Will Davis wants to do with the money he makes in real estate?
I mean, yeah. So it may be, do I have, aspirations of a nonprofit, or is there certain people I'd like to help? Yes. But to be completely honest with you, there's also less noble reasons and less noble things I'd like to do with the money. The first of which is, so I'm on the west side of Denver here. We love Crested Butte. I don't know if anybody's ever been skiing in Crested Butte, Colorado. It's one of the best places in the world. Obviously, I would like to spend more time out there. I'd like to own property out there. So the very selfish, non-noble answer of what I'm going to do with more money is live part-time in Crested Butte. But seriously, I do have, there's people I want to help specific. I've always thought about doing something for pastors, some kind of nonprofit there. There's more than enough ideas and opportunities.
So, but when you look at it, like how does Christ ring into your life right now? Obviously, you're not a pastor, but you're still pastor. Would that be a fair assessment?
Yeah. I think again, I've focused a lot on business and who I want to help and how I want to serve them. And I think right now, what's really just in this exact moment, what's resonating is just the reminder that my first and most important assignment is to my wife and to my kids. And what does that look like? I mean, we'll spend all this time and energy and so much money going to conferences and at how to get better in business, and we generally spend, we don't ever think that hard about what it means to get it right with your family. So for me, ministry is, being faithful to the callings on my life. So first of all, that's a husband. Secondly, it's a father. And then outside of that, it's like, okay, it's this uh, grounding in who I am and what my identity is, because then that better informs what I can offer and who I can serve. If I don't get the identity piece right, it can get a little wonky sometimes. I might get distracted by somebody else's assignment. I might want their assignment instead of focusing on my assignment, or I might be trying to check some box really to satisfy some deeper need in me or whatever else. But if I get the identity right, it tends to align well with, okay, God, what opportunity, where do you want me to walk today, and what does that look like?
Yeah, when you're saying that, I'm hearing when your values are clear, your decisions are easy. When your identity is right, where your time and your energy is going to and investing in, so to speak. But I had a question that just it slipped my mind here. So, do you feel that you're called to financially educate these people? You're called to and I use the word pastor because when you're with your clients, I'm sure does that come up? Does the spirituality piece come up in conversations with clients?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, yeah, absolutely. And I mean, it real estate tends to stress people out sometimes, and it can be stressful. And so
No, not at all.
when you're helping somebody buy a house, you're helping somebody sell, and the offer's not, the offer that comes in on the house is not quite right. And so why isn't it quite right? Well, we start asking questions, and you're talking to the seller, and well, I just always pictured it being this way. And then it's attached to this deeper thing. Or when someone's buying, what's wrong with the house, or what's the issue here? And, there's, so I was working with some first time home buyers, and we, kind of difficult to find the house they're looking for. We find it, everything seems right but it's a bidding war, right? And so we've kind of narrowed it down, and we've got the winning offer most likely, and we can't pull the trigger. And what comes out is, after talking about it for 30 minutes, and this is the pastoring part, is asking questions and understanding people and guiding them is, well, I just was always taught by my dad that you never pay full price for anything. Right. And so without the pastoring moment, we don't get there. And if we can't name it, if we can't name the emotion, we can't deal with it. So we name the emotion, we deal with it, we move forward, we win the bidding war by a hair. And today that is a rental property. That was their first home, and it's also now a rental property. So there's more than enough opportunities to pastor. We just about every client I've ever had, we will pray on the phone. I'll send over the offer. We'll talk through it with it pulled up on their screen and my screen, and then I'll pray for them. And it's just, God, thank you for this opportunity. Thank you for what they're doing. Thank you for this next chapter. You already know what the next house is. We think this could be a good fit. We're going to move forward and take action, but we just ask you to be over it. Give us favor with the seller if it's the right house. And if not, let it not work out. And that's a great moment, and people feel really cared for it. And it also reminds them that what we do or don't do, or, we can release the outcome and trust God. And he's got it all figured out.
Well, you said earlier about the identity not lining up. And sometimes you might get pulled in the direction of wanting something somebody else has. Do you catch that right away? Or sometimes you get sucked in and you start down that road and then you're like, oh, wait a minute, that's not an alignment.
Yeah. It's easy to spot in other people. It's not super easy to spot in myself. And lately, I think, I've very much been going down that road, kind of parsing like, okay, I've been in real estate for 10 years. I'm going to be doing, this new business and this new business, and how, out of all these ideas and opportunities, what is really your motivation here? You know what I mean? Asking myself that. And I'm forgetting, the verse. I think it's, it's talking about David, or it's in 2 Samuel somewhere, but, this idea, the eyes of the Lord roam to and fro throughout the earth to find whose heart is fully his. And a commentator explained that by saying, somebody's motivation is more telling about who they are than what actions they even do or don't take. Why you do something is so much more important than what it is that you do. And so when I'm attracted to this idea or that day, what's the motivation behind that? How much of it is a very kind of holistic, organic journey, something I should step into versus something that I think I need to do or I want to do, or, for me, you're in the Buffini system. I'm looking at my real strengths right here. So I've got, where is it? Ethical. Good gosh. Ethical ruins worlds. And so much of what I think I'm supposed to be doing is influenced by ethical. And it's this idea of like, well, if you're doing this thing, it's definitely the right thing and it's definitely good and it's definitely okay. It hijacks everything in my brain. And I mean, it can be an asset for sure. But if I were to let go of that and let go of trying to always do the right thing for the sake of doing the right thing, it really just has a tendency to hijack and make my vision too small. And so really aligning with, hey, look, I don't, if I'm in alignment with my identities in Christ, I don't have to worry about, going and checking a certain box just to say that I did.
Yeah. Well, you just said, do the right thing for the sake of doing the right thing. But the right thing is always the right thing. So what's that tug of war? Like I'm hearing you and I'm laughing because I know that I've been there before. Give me an example of doing the right thing for the sake of doing the right thing versus doing the right thing maybe because it wasn't the right thing.
Yeah. So
put you on the spot.
Yeah. I think so. So let's just take wealth strategies, for example. So I very much, wanted to kind of focus on families, right? I'm a family. We got 5 kids, and let's go help families. They're all stuck in 90s financial advice. Let's give them a new and a different way out. And as I've tested that market a little bit, it's just not quite aligned, right? It's just not quite, meeting the needs that they have. What had been happening for a year though, that I was ignoring, kind of like, getting into business for the first time, is I was having, realtors call me on the phone and ask me for advice on, real estate professional status and depreciation on rentals and growing all these things. And I was just kind of like, yeah. And I would take the call and help, but I kind of just dismissed it. I'd call somebody to talk about, hey, I got a buyer for your listing. And it would somehow turn into, I want to pick your brain on this. Can we set up another time to meet? Because I want you to look at my stuff and tell me what I got going on. And I just dismissed it and ignored it. And so it was like, when I really got down to it, it was like, I think a piece of me wanted to really focus on, and we still help families, but that overall, that market is not super aligned with what we're doing. Why did I want to help families? Because of the ethical. It was kind of this idea of like, I want to go fight for the little guy, and I want to go help, people make it to the top of the mountain. And if I'm helping the little guy, then clearly that means I'm a good person. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so, but I had realtors calling me, and there was an obvious, realtors and lenders and insurance people and CPAs and even financial advisors that were wanting to come to my house to sit down and talk to me and ask me all these questions. And I just ignored it because it didn't feel to me as noble as helping the little guy, or what I perceived the little guy was.
Yeah, I get it. I understand it. That's awesome, man. That's great stuff. But I'm sure you like helping people. I can sense that, right?
Oh yeah. Super gratifying.
Yeah. So going forward here, Will, where do you see God chiseling you more in the future? What's going to happen there? What do you see happening?
Yeah, I do think a lot of it's around identity. And it's a continual process, but 2025 was an unbelievably humbling, difficult year. And in some ways, some of that has concluded. In some ways, some of that is ongoing. And, you talk about the 5 circles. 5 circles, are, and I don't know, it's interesting. There was just a lot of humility last year. And I think humility always produces, fruit.
And that's part of the chiseling process.
Yeah, it is. And I do think, just with what's going on right now, I do think a lot of it's around just identity. And a lot of that is just around like moving closer to the Lord and trusting him more. And so again, I'm seeing in myself that ambition shift, where a lot of it for me has been like, I want to, and I also have firefighter and Olympian, if you can imagine that. So like I've got 3 out of the intense, family on my profile. But yeah, the firefighter and the Olympian are like, let's freaking go. So that's kind of, there's rocket fuel ambition there, but shifting that and just diverting it slightly to, here's who I am in the Lord. Here's what he's given me today. Let's go help people with open hands.
Well, so where does ego come into play with this? The ego and the identity.
Well, define ego.
Well, of course, there's healthy ego. There's the ego. Let's call it the arrogant ego.
The arrogant ego hopefully doesn't come. I mean, ideally, hopefully it doesn't come into it. I'm sure it does.
Well, what I mean, like, so you have this identity thing you're talking about, and if you see something that you're starting to put your identity in it that you know is not right, but you're attracted to it and you're pulled by it, is it the ego that's pulling you there, or is it something else? What's pulling you there? I think
your ego is trying to give you something you think you want or you think you need, or deal with some kind of wound that you haven't dealt with yet. That's what the ego is doing. Yeah. So the ego can give us information. Why am I drawn to that? And truthfully, like, I mentioned I have a lot of respect for Dave Ramsey as a businessman. I don't really think his financial advice, I think a lot of his financial advice, especially for young families, is damaging. And I don't think it's even that controversial to say it. How many clients do you have that ever got a 15-year mortgage? How many clients do you have that just don't do credit cards at all? Right? Like, I got a YouTube video on, if you follow his housing advice to the T, how much house you can buy, and the only state you can live in is West Virginia. You know what I mean? I'm not out here to bash Dave Ramsey, but my ego can kind of get in the way and say, man, like, we got to go fight this fight because all these people are off on this crazy, that's a little bit, that would be an example of the ego.
Yeah, I understand. I mean, we all have ego in some degree. We all have ego. It's there. It exists. So look, before I let you go here, where do you want to take your career? Where do you want to take the real estate or the financial education piece? Where do you want to take that?
Yeah. I mean, to be honest with you, I think as a guy that likes to do a lot of different things, I'm kind of looking at it as, this is just the next thing God's asked me to move into. So I've got this passion, like you said, this ability. I happen to know a bunch of realtors because I'm a stinking realtor. So it's like, let's just be open-handed with that. And so it's less about, like, right now for me, it's less about drive and here's where I want to go and here are the 8 mountains I'm going to conquer on the way, because I've done plenty of that in the past. It's more about, I'm just going to be available. I'm going to trust the process, open hands, and let's just see where God takes it. I'm going to focus on getting it right with my family, serve the people we serve. Obviously, I still help people buy and sell homes in Denver. Let's just take what we got, be really good with it, and just continue to give and see where it goes. Where would I like it to take me? Ultimately, again, I'd love to end up in Crested Butte, but outside of that,
I was wondering if you're going to mention that.
Yeah.
It's called Crested View or Crestview?
It's called Crested Butte. And
Crested Butte. Okay.
Yeah. If you ever come to Colorado, there's a bunch of great ski resorts out here, but that's my favorite.
Oh, I know that. My wife and I like hiking out there. So look, if somebody wanted to get a hold of you, how would they get a hold of you, Will?
Yeah, social media is going to be best. I would say if you're a realtor, probably LinkedIn. If you're, a home buyer in Denver, probably Facebook's better. But yeah, social media is going to be great.
Awesome. Well, man, I appreciate your time today. I appreciate the wisdom you share with us. And I appreciate your energy and passion, because I could see it. I could feel it. So thank you so much for that today.
Thanks for the opportunity, Rob.
Okay, everybody, until next time, let's go get chiseled.